You walk onto a forecourt in 2026, keys to your old car in your pocket, expecting a fair trade-in. The salesman glances at your logbook. Then he does something I watched happen with my own eyes. He shakes his head and says he cannot take it. Not for a low price. For no price at all. I did not believe that was possible. A car that runs, that passes its test, that got someone to work last Tuesday worth absolutely nothing to a dealer. I thought it was a scare story. So I spent 3 months chasing the truth, ringing dealers, reading the regulations, and testing the market myself. What I found should worry every single person watching this. Because there is a specific list of vehicles that dealers across the United Kingdom are quietly refusing, and the reasons trace back to a European directive signed in the year 2000 that almost nobody read. Stay with me, because by the end I will tell you exactly how to know if your car is on that list, and the one thing you can do this week to protect yourself. Let me take you back to how this started for me. My neighbor, a retired electrician named Ray, drove a diesel estate he had owned for 11 years. Lovely car, leather seats, full history, never let him down once. He decided to trade it in for something smaller. I went with him because he asked me to, and because I am nosy about these things. 3 dealers in one afternoon, 3 refusals. The last one did not even want it as scrap on the forecourt. Ray stood in that showroom looking like the floor had dropped out from under him, and I thought, this makes no sense. That car was perfect, but it was not perfect in the eyes of the market. And that is the first thing I got completely wrong. I assumed a working car had value because it worked. That is how it has always been. You buy a car, you drive it, and when you are done, there is always somebody further down the ladder who wants it cheaper. That ladder is how ordinary families have afforded motoring for 100 years. The banger you buy for a few £100 is the same car somebody once paid thousands for. That chain never broke. Until now. What I discovered is that the bottom rungs of that ladder are being sawn off, one model at a time. And the first group of vehicles falling off are the older diesels, not clapped-out wrecks. Ordinary, tidy, running diesels built before a certain cutoff. Here is the part that shocked me. The cutoff is not about how the car runs. It is about a standard called Euro emissions classification. If your diesel was registered before September 2015, it almost certainly falls under Euro 5 or earlier. And a diesel that is Euro 5 or older is now the wrong side of a line that has been drawn through the middle of Britain. That line has a name. It started as the ultra-low emission zone in central London, which went live in April 2019. Then in August 2023, it expanded to cover every single London borough. Drive a non-compliant diesel inside that boundary and you pay £12.50 every day. And other cities have followed the template. Birmingham, Bristol, Sheffield, Bath, each with its own charging zone and its own rules. Now think about what that does to demand. A dealer buys a car to sell it on, but who is going to buy an older diesel if driving it into a growing number of city centers costs £12.50 a day? That is over £4,000 a year just to drive to work. The buyers vanished, and when the buyers vanish, the dealer cannot sell the car, so the dealer will not take the car, so your perfectly good diesel is worth nothing to him, not because it is broken, because the market for it has been legislated out of existence. I sat with that realization for a long time. Because I have always been told, drive a diesel, they last forever, they hold their value. That was true my whole adult life. It stopped being true almost overnight, and most people have no idea it happened until they try to sell. But diesels are only the beginning. And this is where it gets stranger, because the next vehicles on the unsellable list are the ones we were all told to buy. I am talking about early electric cars. Yes, electric. The very thing pushed as the future, the clean choice, the smart money. Some of the earliest mass-market electric cars are now among the hardest vehicles in the country to sell at any price, and the reason is buried inside the one part nobody thinks about until it is too late. The battery. Let me explain what I learned, because it genuinely changed how I look at every electric car on the road. A modern electric car battery is not one big thing you swap like a torch cell. It is a huge engineered pack of thousands of cells, and it slowly loses capacity as the years pass. That is normal. Every battery does it. The trouble is, what happens when it drops far enough? The first generation of popular electric cars, the ones sold in real numbers from around 2011 to 2016, use smaller batteries with less sophisticated cooling. Some of the very earliest air-cooled packs degraded faster than anyone admitted at the time. And here's the number that stopped me cold when I read it. Replacing one of those battery packs out of warranty can cost more than the entire car is worth. I've found quotes ranging from £6,000 to well over £14,000 depending on the model, on a car you might otherwise sell for $2,000 or $3,000. So picture the dealer's problem. Somebody brings in an 11-year-old electric car. It drives fine today, but the dealer knows that if that battery fails next month, he is holding a vehicle that costs more to fix than it will ever sell for. He cannot offer a warranty on it. He cannot be sure of its remaining range. He cannot even be certain a private buyer will get finance on it. So he does the same thing the diesel dealer did. He says no, politely, but he says no. I want you to notice the pattern forming here because it took me weeks to see it clearly. The vehicles being refused are not the worst cars. In many cases, they are cars that were sold as the responsible, sensible, future-proof choice. Older diesels were the economical workhorses. Early electrics were the clean, forward-thinking option. Both are now landing on the same scrap heap of unsellable metal, and I started to ask myself a very uncomfortable question. Who benefits when the cars ordinary people already own suddenly become worthless? Hold that thought, because the answer is coming, and it is worse than I expected. The third group caught me completely by surprise, because these are not old at all. I am talking about certain plug-in hybrid models from the mid-2010s. The idea sounded perfect. A small battery for short trips, a petrol engine for long ones, the best of both worlds, in theory. In practice, a lot of these cars are now stranded in a no-man's land nobody wants. Here is why. A plug-in hybrid carries the complexity and the battery aging problem of an electric car, plus the entire engine, gearbox, and exhaust system of a petrol car. 2 power systems. Twice the things to go wrong. And when the small battery degrades, which they do, the car ends up lugging a heavy dead battery around while running almost entirely on petrol, so the fuel economy collapses to worse than an ordinary petrol car would give you. The clever machine becomes the worst of both worlds instead of the best. Dealers know this. Buyers, once they have been burned, know this. And so those specific hybrids from around 2014 to 2017 have quietly become some of the slowest, hardest sells on any forecourt. I rang a trade contact, a man who has bought and sold cars for over 30 years, and he told me flatly that he now checks the battery health on those before he will even discuss a number, and half the time the number is 0. But there is a deeper problem sitting underneath all of this, and it is the thing that turned my curiosity into genuine concern. It is a piece of law almost nobody has heard of. In the year 2000, the European Union passed something called the End-of-Life Vehicles Directive. The United Kingdom wrote it into our own law in 2003. On paper, it sounds sensible and green. It says that when a vehicle reaches the end of its life, it must be scrapped properly, depolluted, and recycled by an authorized treatment facility, and it sets recycling targets of around 95% of the vehicle's weight. Fine. Nobody wants oil dumped in rivers. But sit with what that directive quietly created. It built an entire official channel for turning cars into scrap, with rules, with paperwork, with certificates of destruction. And once you have a smooth, government-approved pipeline for destroying cars, it becomes very easy to push more and more vehicles into that pipeline and out of the second-hand market. Every car that goes down the scrappage chute is a car that will never again be sold cheaply to someone who needs affordable transport. The latter loses another rung. And here is where I stopped believing this was all just coincidence and market forces, because the same interests that profit from you scrapping your old car are the ones who profit from selling you a new one. Think it through with me. When your car is declared unsellable, you have two choices. You pay to have it taken away as scrap, which puts a little money into the recycling and metals business, or you use it as a token trade-in against a brand new vehicle, often on a finance deal, which puts a great deal of money into the manufacturer and the lender. Either way, the moment your existing car is labeled worthless, you are pushed toward spending again. The worthless car is not a problem for the industry. It is the goal. I know how that sounds. For most of my life, I would have rolled my eyes at anyone saying it. I was the skeptic. I trusted that a good car held its value because value was real. But I watched Ray get turned away 3 times in one afternoon. I read the directive with my own eyes, and I did the sums on those battery replacements, and I cannot pretend anymore that this is an accident. It is a system, and the system is designed so that the metal you own quietly expires on a schedule that suits everyone except you. Now, I promised you this would not just be bad news, and I meant it, because once I understood the machine, I also understood how to stay one step ahead of it. And this next part is for the person watching who is thinking, that is fine for people with money and choices, but I drive what I can afford, and I cannot just go buy a new car. I hear you. I was in exactly that position. This part is especially for you, and it costs nothing but attention. And if you want to go even deeper into this, the full picture of how the system works, who profits, and exactly what you can do about it, I have put everything together in a series of digital books. The 3 titles are First Fixes, Deep Habits, and System Complete, and together they cover the practical steps, the background research, and the longer-term strategies that I could not fit into a single video. You will find the details in the description below. They are the reference I wish I had owned the afternoon I watched Ray walk out of that showroom with nothing. But back to the pattern forming here, because it took me weeks to see it clearly. The single most powerful thing you can do is find out, today, which side of the emissions line your own car sits on. This is free. The government runs a vehicle checker where you type in your registration and it tells you your car's details, and Transport for London runs a separate free checker that tells you in seconds whether your exact car is compliant with the emission zones. You do not need a mechanic. You do not need to pay anyone. You just need your number plate and 5 minutes. Because everything downstream, the resale value, the daily charges, whether a dealer will touch it, all of it flows from that one classification. Knowing it puts you back in control before anyone can spring it on you. Here is the second thing, and I tested this one myself, so I know it works. If you own a compliant car, a petrol car from 26 onward, or a diesel from September 2015 onward that meets Euro 6, you are holding something increasingly valuable, and you should look after it like it is valuable, because it is. The market is splitting in two. Compliant cars are becoming the new gold. Non-compliant cars are becoming scrap. The gap between those two worlds widens every single month. A tidy, low-mileage, compliant older car may end up worth more in 3 years than it is worth today, which is something that has almost never happened in the history of motoring. And here is the third thing, the one that saved Ray real money in the end. Do not take your unsellable car to a main dealer and accept nothing for it. That car still has value, just not to the person selling shiny new models. There are specialist buyers who export older diesels to countries with no emission zones, where a solid, reliable Euro 5 estate is worth good money. Ray sold his car to an exporter for nearly £900 after 3 dealers offered him zero. Same car, same day. The value did not disappear. It just moved to a market the dealer did not serve, and the dealer had no reason to tell him that. So already, with nothing but a free online check and a bit of stubbornness, you can go from being a victim of this system to someone who sees it coming. But I told you at the start there was a secret, one specific thing I found buried in the research that almost nobody talks about, and I am going to give it to you now, because it is the piece that ties everything together. While I was digging through the history of all this, I went looking for how earlier generations handled the same problem, because the idea of the state deciding when your vehicle is finished is not actually new, And I found something remarkable in the records around the Second World War and the years just after it. During and after the war, Britain faced severe shortages of steel and rubber and fuel, and there was enormous pressure to scrap old vehicles for the war effort. Posters, campaigns, the lot. And yet a whole culture of keeping vehicles alive grew up in direct response, because ordinary people could not simply be handed a new car. They had nothing to replace it with. So they maintained, repaired, and preserved. The specific thing I found was the practice, documented in old motoring and household economy guides from the 1940s and into the 1950s, of what they called laying up a vehicle. When a car could not be run economically, people did not scrap it. They preserved it in a state where it could be brought back. And the core of that method is startlingly simple and works just as well today as it did 80 years ago. Here is what they did, and here is what I tried in my own garage. If you have a car you cannot sell but do not want to hand over for nothing, you can preserve it so it holds value and stays alive until the market shifts, and markets always shift. You take the weight off the tires so they do not develop flat spots, using axle stands or simply moving it a little every few weeks. You keep the battery from dying by disconnecting it or using a trickle charger, which costs about 15 pounds. You fill the fuel tank almost to the top to stop moisture forming inside it and rusting it from within, an old trick that genuinely works. You put a little oil into the cylinders through the spark plug holes on a petrol engine to stop the internal seizing, exactly as the wartime manuals described. And you keep the paperwork, the history, the receipts, all of it in one folder. Why does this matter now? Because the cars being declared worthless today are not worthless forever. Emission rules get challenged. Exemptions appear for older vehicles once they cross into classic status, which in Britain currently happens at 40 years of age when a car becomes exempt from road tax and from the annual test. A car dumped for scrap today is gone forever. A car preserved with a 15-pound trickle charger and a tank of fuel is an asset waiting for its moment. The wartime generation understood something we forgot in our throwaway decades. The value of a machine is not only what it fetches this afternoon, it is what it can still do when the world changes again. I tested this on an old motorbike before I trusted it on anything bigger, and the thing fired back into life after 2 years of sitting on the original fuel because I had done the simple preservation steps from a manual printed before I was born. That is the moment I stopped seeing these forgotten methods as quaint. They are power, they are independence. They are the difference between being told what your property is worth and deciding it for yourself. Now let me bring the full list together, because I have been showing you the categories, and I want you to know exactly what dealers are turning away in 2026, so you can recognize your own vehicle or your family's. The older non-compliant diesels, Euro 5 and below, registered before September 2015, especially the large estates and saloons that were once so desirable. The earliest mass-market electric cars from the first generation with degraded or air-cooled batteries, the mid-decade plug-in hybrids with small, worn batteries and doubled complexity, large, thirsty petrol vehicles with high engine capacities that fall foul of both fuel costs and emission scoring, older vans that businesses can no longer drive into city zones, and cars with expensive model-specific faults where the repair costs more than the market value, which the emission squeeze makes far more common because it crushes the resale value that used to justify the repair. Every one of those was, at some point, a sensible purchase. That is what I keep coming back to. Nobody on that list made a foolish choice. They bought good cars, looked after them, and then watched an invisible line move underneath them until the thing they owned was on the wrong side of it. And that is why this should concern you even if your car is fine today, because the line keeps moving. The zones keep expanding. The standard that is compliant this year becomes the standard that is questioned in a few years. The plan to end sales of new petrol and diesel cars, which has been pushed toward 2030 and 2035 and argued over ever since, tells you the direction of travel. The car in your driveway right now, the one you think is safe, is on a timer you did not set and cannot see. The only defense is to understand the machine and act before it acts on you. I want to be honest about the emotional side of this, because it is the part that stayed with me longest. When I watched Ray in that showroom, what I saw was not a man losing money. It was a man being told that something he had cared for, maintained, and trusted for 11 years was suddenly nothing. That the pride he took in keeping it perfect meant nothing to the people who set the rules. There is a quiet insult in being told your careful, sensible, hard-earned property is worthless. And multiply Ray by millions of drivers across this country, and you start to see the scale of what has been quietly done to ordinary people while we were all looking the other way. But knowledge changes everything. Ray did not accept the zero. He got his £900. He checked his next car against the emission rules before he bought it, so he will never be ambushed the same way twice. And he laid up his old motorbike using the very method I just gave you, because he decided that from now on, he and not the forecourt would decide what his machines were worth. That is what I want for you. Not fear, control. The whole reason these methods were buried is that a person who knows how to check a classification for free, who knows how to reach the export buyers the dealers ignore, and who knows how to preserve a machine with 15 pounds of kit, is a person who is very hard to push around. And a person who is hard to push around is very bad for business if your business depends on people believing their cars expire on schedule. So here is where I will leave you, and I mean this as more than advice. Somewhere out there is a driveway or a garage with a good honest vehicle in it that someone was about to give away for nothing because a dealer told them it was worthless. If that is you or someone you love, you now know it is not true. The value did not vanish. It was hidden from you, and you can find it again. You are the kind of person who suspects that a lot of what we are told to throw away was never really rubbish at all. You are right. The people who preserve their vehicles through rationing and shortages knew it. The exporters quietly buying the diesels nobody supposedly wants know it. And now you know it too. So tell me one thing in the comments, and be specific because I read them. Have you, or has anyone you know, ever been offered nothing for a car that ran perfectly well? What was the car, and what year was it, and which side of the emission line did it turn out to be on? Write it down below, and tell me which town or country you are watching from, because I want to map just how widespread this really is. Do not stay silent on this one. Your story might be the exact warning another viewer needs before they walk onto that forecourt. And if you believe, as I have come to believe, that real practical knowledge has been quietly buried to keep ordinary people paying, then come stand with the rest of us who are digging it back up. Because next time I am going to show you the forgotten way people kept a vehicle running for 20 years and more without ever setting foot in a main dealer, including one maintenance habit from an old service manual that the industry would very much prefer you never learned. You do not want to miss what that one saves you. Here's what I couldn't fit in. The deeper version picks up right where I stopped, walking you through the diesel devaluation escape plan for your own logbook. That's inside the Old Ways Society. There you can ask me your own question, and a real person answers you myself. And you're not alone. Huh, so many Old Ways folks like you are already in there with me. Just point your phone camera at the code on screen. Cancel anytime,